Peace and blessings. Welcome back to the channel once again, where we talk all things health and healing from a holistic perspective, and today will be no different. Today we're going to talk about nature's healer of all healers, the greatest healer in nature. Okay? It is so unfortunate that today, this thing which is responsible for all life, this thing that without it, no life would exist. This thing that not only provides life, but also provides healing as well too. There's countless stories and, history showing that when you take an opportunity to go in this type of environment around this healer, it heals your body, okay? And especially with what it creates in its own environment, okay? When it's in abundance. And so it's so unfortunate today that we go from historically our ancestors understanding not only the power of this in the sense of healing, its healing power, but also its divine power as well too. Okay, it's so divine that in many cultures it was made a god in and of itself. Okay. And so it's so unfortunate that today somehow this thing we know that life would not exist without, it heals and it provides. It makes everything flourish. It's so unfortunate that today, not only are we being told to stay away from this thing, we're told to protect ourselves from it as well too. So it shows you that what I always say is that when they say go right, go left, okay? And it's so unfortunate today as well that many people believe that they're allergic to this healer. And that healer that I'm talking about is the sun, okay? Now, I know a lot of people out there are thinking to themselves, the sun does all of that? Yep, the sun does all of that. And what's really important, because I'm doing this message right at the peak of summer, as summer is starting to peak, this is the time that you want to take full advantage of building up your sun exposure, okay? And getting all of those healing benefits from the sun, which is what we're going to talk about throughout this video in just a second. This is the time of year where you're building up those vitamin D stores to take you throughout the winter until you get back to spring. Okay, so it's hugely important we know and understand that. I know that you've been told to put on sunblock endlessly. I know that you've probably been told that you need to stay out of the sun. I know that you've probably been told that the sun is cooking the earth. And I know that you've probably been told that the sun is dangerous, but I'm here to tell you, without the sun, life would cease to exist. And I'll also tell you the reason why they're telling you all those things is because they don't understand why so many people are now sensitive to the sun. Okay, which is a whole nother topic, a whole nother video, which I'll jump into, maybe a video after this and describe why so many people are sensitive to the sun today. Whereas opposed to, if you look at our history as human beings, we have lived outside in the sun, in nature, for virtually all of our existence up until the last 70 years. Okay? Even when people, had homes, of course, there wasn't air conditioning, so people just didn't lay around in the house. It was hot. Okay? So people spent the vast majority of their time outside. And people not only spent the vast majority of their time outside of their homes, the vast majority of work that was being done by human beings for millions of years was outside. When we hunt and gathered and, socialized, everything was done outside in the sun, okay? And if you go back 70 years, skin cancer is very, very rare. And you will be hard pressed to find somebody, especially a melanated somebody, who is sensitive to the sun. Okay, so something has changed. Okay, but again, that's an entirely different video. But what I want to emphasize to you guys today is how important it is that you get sun exposure. Okay, now I'll give you a caveat before I jump into some of these videos, these benefits. The caveat that I'm going to give you is this: some people are sensitive to the sun, but there's a reason. Okay, a lot of that has to do with the type of diet that you have. Okay, and I know you're thinking to yourself, how is it that nutritionally deficient and toxic latent diet, how would that cause you to have sensitivity to the sun? Well, trust me, most people who eat a standard American diet, which is 69%, roughly 70% processed food chemistry, food products, not food. Trust me, the skin is one of the largest organ, and is one of the largest elimination organs. And as all that toxicity is coming out through the skin, it is literally frying your skin, okay? And again, we'll dive into that in another video, but it's hugely important you understand that no life on earth would exist without the sun. No plant life, no animal life, nothing would exist without the sun. And you start to look at how they're doing things today to put particles in the atmosphere to block out the sun, okay? So again, it's really important you understand that when I say they, I'm going to say they because I don't know who they are. We know some of the main characters, but we don't know those people in the background. But what I can tell you is when people are making genetically modified food and lab-grown food, and they're also trying to blot out, you know, the sun rays that are coming in that we actually need, you can kind of see what kind of position we're in as human beings today, okay? It's a very dangerous time, unfortunately. And this is why it's so important that we get back to the foundations of health. This is why it's so important we get back to those foundations of health. But I want to help you understand why getting sun exposure is so important. And I'm going to give you 10 reasons. And I know that you know that sun exposure is important for vitamin D. And I'm going to give you 10 that really have, and without mentioning vitamin D. I'm going to give you 10 benefits without mentioning vitamin D. Because most people think that they could just take a supplement or vitamin D and replace the sun. But the sun is a natural doctor that you must have in your life. It is an absolute necessity. And especially for people who are melanated like myself, who are dark skinned. You need even more sun, okay? Because this melanin, part of what this melanin does is block out some of that sun, okay? So we need even more, all right? And what we tend to find is that roughly around 75 to 80% of people who are melanated, brown, dark-skinned people, we find that 75 to 80% of them are vitamin D deficient. And vitamin D alone, again, vitamin D isn't going to be one of the benefits that I named from the sun, but vitamin D alone is responsible for our bones. It's responsible for our immune system. It's responsible for our mental health, okay? We can't even modulate or activate our immune system without vitamin D, and 80% of people who are melanated are deficient in vitamin D, okay? Because the people who are melanated come from the equator. Our people evolved around the equator where we get the most amount of sun, okay? So we're supposed to be getting sun. We're acclimated to getting sun, and now we're in environments north of the equator here in the US, and especially if you are north of Atlanta in terms of like the equator, if you're north of that, you're definitely not getting enough sun. So this is a very, very important conversation that I'm having about the sun. And again, it's really important we get our vitamin D levels up. Vitamin D is also really important for pregnancy as well too. We find that mothers who are deficient in vitamin D, we find that they have an increased risk of having issues during childbirth. Okay, so it's hugely important. All right, and again, I'm going to give you 10 reasons or 10 benefits of the sun that have nothing to do with vitamin D, and then vitamin D is extremely important. And the cool thing about vitamin D is not a vitamin at all, it's actually a hormone. All right, so it's even more important because it's a hormone. So it's telling the body what to do. Like it tells the immune system to respond in the presence of a virus or in the presence of the C word, cancer. Okay? And so when we don't have adequate vitamin D levels and we get a cell that mutates, then guess what? And we don't respond properly, that early stage cancer becomes second or third stage cancer. Okay? But if we had a strong immune system and adequate levels of vitamin D, it responds very quickly. We never know we have cancer. So just hugely important. That's vitamin D related to the sun. And I'm about to give you 10 benefits of the sun that have nothing to do with vitamin D. All right, so let's get started. Number one benefit, and this is not any order of priority. One benefit is going to be it puts the body in what is called circadian rhythm. Circadian literally means essentially the sun. So puts you in rhythm with the sun. Okay? So we all have a circadian rhythm in our bodies. And typically what they'll say is circadian is related to the light and dark cycles. So having light, having sun exposure, and then when the sun goes down, the body does something differently biochemistry wise. Okay? Now, what's important about this is that your circadian rhythm, when you're in circadian rhythm with the sun, okay? You're in circadian rhythm with the sun in terms of when you wake up, okay? You're in circadian rhythm in terms of when you eat and don't eat, okay? So that's what it means, like being in circadian rhythm, but it also means that when you're doing things in rhythm with the sun, it changes your biochemistry. I'll give you one example. The one example is if you go out in the morning, early in the morning, between 8 and 9:30, and get sun on you, direct sun on you, and look into the direction of the sun. You don't have to look directly into the sun. And you get that sun to hit the back of the retina of the eye, it literally triggers your body to release melatonin 12 hours later. It triggers your body to release cortisol initially to wake you up. And then when you're getting towards the sleep time, it causes that cortisol level to go down. So then you become tired and go to sleep along with the melatonin levels rising. Okay? So that's what I mean by circadian rhythm. If you're not in circadian rhythm, the sun goes down and then you wait until midnight to go to sleep every night, then it's going to throw the rhythm off and that melatonin releases around about 8, 9 o'clock, and then you constantly avoid it, and then it becomes difficult to go to sleep around 12 o'clock, okay? So that's what I mean by getting sun exposure puts your body in circadian rhythm. Hugely important, okay? And also, number two is really good for mental health, and this is why it's good for mental health. When you're getting sun exposure, it helps to regulate serotonin and also melatonin, okay? This helps with seasonal affective disorder or SAD disorder, okay? Which is characterized by almost a depression during certain seasons, specifically the winter, okay, and fall, all right? It also helps to improve sleep. It also helps to improve that circadian rhythm as well, too. So that's number 2, improves mental health, okay? Number 3, it will reduce cortisol levels. So cortisol is known as a stress hormone, okay? Now, what it does is it decreases cortisol on the descending phase, okay? Most people, when they think of hormones, they think of hormones in terms of it's either all of this or all of that. It doesn't work like that. It's more like a symphony. Just like with a woman's cycle, at some parts of the cycle, estrogen is up. At parts of the cycle, estrogen is down. Okay, it's the same thing with cortisol. Okay, if it works perfectly in rhythm, there's going to be points where it elevates and there's going to be points where it starts to descend. And then the lower it gets, the easier it is for you to go to sleep. So one of the things that happens when you're getting sun exposure is that you're actually decreasing the cortisol levels during the descending phase. When it's actually going down, what makes it easier for you to go to sleep. So if you're having sleep trouble, getting sun exposure consistently will help you with that. Okay. Now, again, initially it does a 50% increase. This wakes you up in the morning. All right. So that's a good thing. But then later on, it does that descending phase and it decreases. So that's a really good thing, lowering the cortisol in your body, lowering that stress hormone. Okay. And that stress hormone, if it stays elevated, it will cause you to gain weight. Okay. Which we'll talk about in just a second. Number 4, pain relief. Okay. Pain relief. Getting sun exposure can actually help you when you have pain. Okay. And the reason why is because the UVB rays cause the skin to release what are called beta endorphins. Okay. Endorphins are being released, okay, naturally, to fight against a pain or a trauma that happens to you. Okay. This is essentially what opioid drugs are trying to do, to release opioid compounds and also endorphins, okay, to decrease the amount of pain in your body. So getting regular sun exposure, if I had an injury, I would spend more time in the sun because it naturally gives me those natural endorphins. That way I don't have to take anything like an opioid or ibuprofen or anything like that. Okay. Number 5, the good thing about sun exposure is that it's going to also help with your vision as well too. It's been shown to decrease nearsightedness. Okay. And being outside in general helps you as well too, because when you're inside of the building, you're constantly looking at small things. Okay. You're looking at the time on the clock. You're looking at your cell phone. You're looking at the TV. These are small objects. Whereas when you're going outside, you may see a building. You may see a mountain in the distance. And so it gets your eyes to change focus. And that's what our eyes aren't doing because we're constantly inside. So being outside helps also because you're getting the sun exposure, and that helps as well too. But also being outside in general helps as well too. All right, so that's number 5. Number 6, it also acts as a jaundice treatment. Okay, so you've probably seen babies in the hospital where they put them inside of these incubators that have like a blue light in it, the UV light in it. Okay, and when they have that yellow tint on the eyes or their skin becomes yellow. Okay, this is called jaundice. Now this happens because there's a buildup of what is called bilirubin. Okay, it's a byproduct of old red blood cells. All right. Now, the reason why that's important is because, again, jaundice can really affect a baby's life. And it's also a really good note because the sun rays give off UV light. And guess what you're doing with the baby? You're putting them in an incubator with UV light. It's just unnatural. Okay. So it's just really important to understand that it could possibly be that for hundreds of thousands of years, when we had babies, they got sun exposure. The mother got sun exposure, okay? Because the predominant activities are outside. And then when you have a baby, most people had a baby at home and then they would go outside. Well, now we sort of insulate a baby from going outside. We don't take them anywhere, okay? They get exposed to nothing. And not only is that a problem, but most babies aren't breastfed. Many babies don't go through the womb, they go through a C-section. Okay, so we're avoiding a lot of those natural, processes that are very healthy to a baby, which will explain why so many babies are sick and there's so many preemies as well too today as well. But again, number 6, sun exposure helps with jaundice. I mean, we know that because, again, we put babies in incubators with UV light, and guess what? We get UV light from the sun, okay? Again, you can kind of see this pattern of taking an idea that's natural and making an unnatural idea of it, okay? Or product of it, all right? Number 7, it's also been shown to help with lowering blood pressure as well, too, okay? And that's really important because, not to mention vitamin D, because I already did, but vitamin D also plays a role in high blood pressure. So sun exposure actually helps with lowering blood pressure as well too. Like I said, it is the healer of all healers. okay? You get one thing that does all of these things, okay? Number eight, it helps to improve sleep. As I mentioned before, it helps with the sleep-wake cycle, okay? So you get that sun exposure between 8 and 9:30 a.m. in the morning, 10 minutes, okay? 10 minutes of sun exposure, all right? Directly on the face, all right? Walking into the direction of sun or standing in the direction of the sun. And now it's hitting the back of the retina on the eye, telling the brain, okay, the sun has come up, we're awake, okay? 12 hours later, let's release some melatonin so we can go to sleep. All right, let's drop the cortisol level so we can go to sleep. So that's why it improves our sleep level as well, too. Okay. Number nine helps with weight loss. Okay. And this is really important. This is something that I learned on my personal journey. The importance of getting sunlight and heat to the body. The body needs like heat. Okay. It's natural for us to be in heat, especially when it's the summertime and spring. Okay, but we live in these controlled environments where the temperature is set at a temperature and there's always that temperature, or we're always in a cool environment. So our bodies are constantly being cooled. Okay, our bodies have to learn how to regulate. Temperature goes up, temperature goes down, the body adjusts to it. Okay, if we don't get sun exposure, okay, it doesn't trigger a lot of things. One of the things that the sun will trigger is the release of a hormone called leptin. And leptin helps to suppress the appetite. All right, that's hugely important because this will decrease the amount of fat. Okay, this not only suppresses the appetite, but it actually increases fat burning ability. Okay, so this is why sun exposure is important. So instead of going inside to work out in a gym, work out outside. Okay, you can get your workout on, and while you're getting your workout on, you're also getting one of the best healers there are in nature. Okay, and then the last one is that it boosts the immune system. Again, that ties back to vitamin D. But if you're one of those people who are always sickly, one of the things that I've noticed is people, when they get sick, they have this innate intuition to say, I need to go somewhere tropical. And when you think to go somewhere tropical, you're not only going there because fruit is going to be in abundance. And guess what is loaded in fruit? Antioxidants, okay? Bioflavonoids, okay? Polyphenols, these things that are loaded that essentially help to boost the immune system. But also when you go to tropical environments, sun is going to be in abundance. Fresh air is going to be in abundance, okay? So this is why we get this innate calling to go to somewhere tropical, all right? Now, last thing I want to give you guys is some recommendations for the sun. Again, if you're one of those people who are sensitive to the sun, change your diet. We'll talk about this in another video, okay? Because that could be affecting why you're having so much sensitivity to the sun. It also could be medications as well, too, because certain medications, especially these acne medications and other medications like them, could cause you to be sensitive to the sun as well, too. All right? But be very careful because a lot of the sunblock has a component in it or a toxin in it called oxybenzone, which is actually cancerous. Okay? So you got to be careful. I typically, you know, when I go in the sun, like, I don't have any problems because I'm constantly in the sun. Okay? But what I typically do is I start off early in the morning when the sun is not at its highest peak, so it's not as hot. And then I come back out constantly throughout the day. That just gets my body used to the sun. So I highly recommend that you do that. The other thing is, in terms of how much sun you need, if you're a fair skinned or light skinned person, I would say between 15 and 20 minutes a day. And that's with exposure, meaning like you can't be fully clothed getting sun exposure or behind a mirror or behind glass. Okay, so 15 to 20 minutes. If you're more melanated, darker like myself, you're gonna need 30 to 40 minutes, 45 minutes, okay? And just the best way to go about doing this is honestly spending more time outside. Again, you can work out outside instead of going inside of the gym. Take walks, okay? Sit on the porch, go outside in the backyard, but just figure out more ways to get outside, because again, during this time of the year, we want to start building up those vitamin D stores to support us throughout the winter, going back into the spring. And this is what's going to help our immune system remain constant, okay? As opposed to staying inside cars, inside of buildings, inside of the AC, and never getting that sun exposure, okay? Make sure if you have not hit that subscribe button, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button, and share this video, because again, as I said before, roughly 75 to 80% of melanated people who have dark skin, are deficient in vitamin D. And that number is still high for fair skinned people as well too. So this is a real issue because we've changed our lifestyle. And it's so important that we get back to those natural doctors, and one of those natural doctors being the sun. Until the next time, peace and blessings and Godspeed.